A while back, Carol Burdett with United Way and I were talking about the number of deaths that were happening in Anderson County. And with that conversation led to an idea that Carol had: why don't we get the community involved? If we're going to solve these problems in our county, we can't do it alone. One person can't make a difference, but maybe we can get the community involved and find ways to fix the problems we have in our community. A couple weeks ago we had the mental health issues, and we had a good debate on that. But tonight, the number one problem we have in our community and the number one deaths we're seeing in Anderson County is drug addiction and drug overdoses. Since last Friday, we've had 3 deaths in Anderson County that our office has investigated, and these are young people. These are people between the age of 18 and 40 in our community that are losing their lives. We've had 24 deaths this year in Anderson County from substance abuse and polydrug deaths. And you'll hear more about it from our panel. We have a great panelist to talk about these issues. But from the standpoint of Anderson County, I've been in the coroner's office since 1989, and I've never seen the epidemic of deaths we're having with drug deaths going on right now. In the last 2 years, it's gotten to be just out of control. And probably about a year ago, we formed a panel with the Chamber of Commerce, a drug task force that's made up of many stakeholders in the community. We have been working for about 10 months to come up with some ideas of how we can combat this problem. Our panel took a tour of the county jail. We discovered the county jail is certainly overcrowded. It certainly sees most of the people that have an addiction problem because they've been arrested. But I don't think that's helping our problem, putting people in jail. We've got to find ways to help these people get off drugs. And I think it's become apparent to our task force committee because we're coming up with some recommendations on how we can take care of this. But I recently talked to a person that had an addiction problem that got help. He went to Wellspring. It was a program that ANMED had, and he said it saved his life. And he wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Wellspring. He got detoxification and got a 14-day program that saved him. And I think we're lacking in a lot of those programs right now, and I think we'll hear that, and we'll talk about that more. But those are some of the issues that we have. We just don't have enough detoxification centers, and we're not, I think, spending our money in the right way. We need to redirect our money, and we need to focus it in different directions, because what we're doing right now isn't working. And we'll continue to see these deaths increase. We'll continue to see crimes happen because of that. So,
thank you all again. Thank you, Greg. I think this is needed. I think it's past time that we started kind of looking at this, at least, and I'm just kind of speaking selfishly from a law enforcement perspective, is we've never been geared to really look at the addiction side of the drug crisis. I started investigating drugs in 2002. It's 15 years. 12 of those I was assigned permanently to a federal task force in Greenville. So I worked various drug cases all over the state and country. In that time, I saw the rise of methamphetamine. I saw cocaine go up and down, but I've never seen anything like we're seeing in the last year and a half. And unfortunately, it's almost cliche to say that now. To say that we've never seen anything like this, but we haven't. It's progressing so fast that from a law enforcement and government perspective, it's just hard for us to keep up with. I kind of liken it to trying to put your thumb over a fire hose. I mean, it's just changing so rapidly, and the fact that it's a chemical and there's synthetics involved now, and the good old days you had drugs were drugs. Now we have chemical compounds and synthetic compounds that we just can't adapt to yet. So that's a challenge for us. But I came back in January, and now I oversee the Special Investigations Division of the Sheriff's Office, which includes narcotics, street crimes, fugitives, and the major case unit. And as we took that over and kind of revamped everything, I started thinking, somebody distributing drugs, which is what we're good at finding, is only part of the problem. It's the addiction side that's driving the guys that are selling drugs, and I'm a realist. I understand that you're never gonna eliminate all that stuff. It's been around for thousands of years, but you know, I think it's up to us, and we have a responsibility to kind of look at things from an open perspective. And you know, unfortunately, I see a lot of familiar faces. I spoke with some people this morning in Sydney. I see some familiar faces of parents, of guys I grew up with, girls I grew up with. So I have a personal interest there to try to make a difference. And you know, just from a law enforcement perspective, you know, we're not there to put people in jail. I'd like to see people help. And if we have to put them in jail, I'd like to see them get help while they're there. I think that's one thing we failed at in the law enforcement community over the years, just as a whole, is I think that we do not offer people a chance. I think we incarcerate, put people behind bars, and for the most part, they're worse when they get out. So, you know, I think it's up to us. I think we have a responsibility to try to help people while they're there. You know, it's always been a kind of a creed of the Department of Corrections is to rehabilitate. And I don't think I just be honest, I don't think we've done a good enough job doing that. I think we need to have a little more of that. You know, there's a discussion about our jail, and we'd love to have programs inside the jail. We just don't have the room. You know, we're stacking people in there as it is. So that's kind of where my interest is, and kind of where my heart is that this is definitely a crisis, and I think it's going to take all of us, everybody in this room, and, you know, including law enforcement, the coroner, and everybody else, to really get a handle on it. And, you know, I'm here for help too. I'm not here to profess anything, but I'm here asking for help as well. You know, any ideas anybody has to pass along, I'm willing, you know, now or after.
Ross, can you kind of elaborate on the types of drugs you're seeing on the street?
Well, we're, you know, again, unfortunately, a lot of the other drugs haven't slowed down. But we're seeing fentanyl, we're seeing carfentanil, we're seeing heroin, we're seeing various types of synthetic heroin, both in powder form and tablets. You know, unfortunately now, you know, fixing one problem creates another oftentimes, and with the rescheduling of you know, things like Lortab and things like that, it's harder to get. So you know, the people that use Lortab and have for years, or any other opioid for years, you know, have an addiction. If they can't get it from a doctor, they're going to get it somewhere else. And you know, unfortunately, you know, there's a true physical addiction there. And you know, I think we've done a good job of restricting some of that stuff and rescheduling it, making it harder for the doctors to prescribe unnecessarily. But unfortunately, there's a flip side of that too, right? There's people that need that medicine that they're not in a program to get detoxified, so they're going to go wherever they can to get it. And unfortunately, that's to their local drug dealer, who's now adapted from selling regular drugs to now they're pressing pills and they contain fentanyl and various other synthetics. We don't even know. We have no idea, to be honest with you, that some of that stuff is until we get it to the lab. And it's not like on TV where you just, you know, rushed up them off to the lab and 15 minutes later they got your results. So that's one of the frustrating parts for us, is just keeping up with the logistics of it all.
Jason McDowell wanted me to share with you just a couple of comments. He's the one that I talked with that had an addiction that went to Wellsprings and had some help. And he just wanted to kind of share with you that if you've ever had the worst flu in your life, multiply it by 10, that's what these drugs will do to you with withdrawals. And he said that you know, you start having these withdrawals and you can take a pill or do that drug again and get immediate relief. So what are you going to do? You need immediate relief. And it just goes on and it gets more and more repetitive of what you need. He says that that what we've been doing, we've been putting our resources in the wrong place, and he wants to stress that. He says that you know, he has recovered Sydney for what, 8 years? Yeah. 8 years that he's been clean. And he says that he's seeing his friends, people that he grew up with, that are now being coroner cases. We've had a couple just recently that you know, we talked about. But he wants, you know, the word to get out that, you know, what we're doing and what we've been doing isn't working. We have got to find ways to get facilities, detoxification facilities, and programs to help these people get off the drugs. He says once you get them off the drugs, the drug dealers will go away because nobody will want these drugs. But we've got to help those that have these drug problems. Putting them in jail just puts them in a cell with somebody else that has a drug problem. And they're going to sit there and talk about, you know, their situation, and it's not going to help, you know, someone that's an addict that's trying to get help. So he wanted me to share those things with you. Next up, we have Karen Beck, the Executive Director of Oconee Behavioral Services.
I am the Director of Anderson Oconee Behavioral Health Services, and the name is a little bit deceiving. What we do is we're an outpatient drug and alcohol rehab program. We serve the counties of Anderson and Oconee County. Interesting enough, when you're talking about addiction and you're talking about the opioid crisis, I asked my staff to pull some stats for me to see what the demographics are of the folks that are coming into my agency. And the interesting thing is that even though we've got an epidemic here, and you're calling it an epidemic, out of the percentage, out of 100% of the clients that I've seen since January of this year, only 6% were diagnosed with an opioid disorder. That to me was mind-boggling. Why? Why? It's here, we know it's here, we know it's happening, but why? Because they're not seeking treatment, they're not seeking help with the addiction. And that's the scary thing about it. Or either they're in total denial that they even have an addiction. And most people that we see are alcoholics or they're on marijuana. Those are the two types of what we see in our facility. Opioids, like I said, is down the list, 6%. I can't force them to come into my agency. I'm there. We're there for services and we're there to provide services. But I can't force them to come in the door. They have to want to come in the door. So they have to get past that denial. And basically, our referral sources and our highest referral source is the judicial system. So they're forced to come to us for some reason or another. We work closely with DSS, we work closely with parents, we work closely with kids. I can't get out there and I can't give enough services. We have just recently procured 2 grants. I've got 2 grants to provide services in Oconee and Anderson County. One of them is with the detention center as a peer support specialist. It's a person that's already in recovery, been in recovery for quite a while, and they'll be able to go into the detention center and work with those people in the detention center. So that is part of our community support. We've got the exact same thing in Oconee County, however, it's not with the detention center in Oconee County, it's just with the community. So we're out there and we're providing the services. I can't make them come see us. So that's frustrating in itself. We've got grants, we've got all sorts of things to provide services for people and not charge them. Block grants that pay for services. So it's there, whether or not the community knows it's there, that I don't know. But granted, most of the people that come into my agency are forced to be there and they have no choice. And the highest reason for being there is alcohol use and abuse. And the second highest is cannabis. So you talk about a crisis, you talk about an epidemic, but we're not seeing it because it's a different kind of epidemic. You're seeing it on your end in the coroner's office and law enforcement, but we're not seeing it. They're not coming to us. And so that to me is an issue in itself. But we provide all the services. We're an outpatient facility. I provide intensive outpatient for those folks who need more, and it's a program that runs like Monday through Thursday, a couple hours a day. We provide aftercare programs, so it's not that they go through our program and once they finish and complete successfully that they're dumped on back out into the community. We provide continuous support to them to come back, and we keep up with them and we keep contact with them. So we're here and we're trying to do the best that we can, but granted, I can't go out on the street and pull them in because it's not going to do any good. They're not going to walk into my door until they hit rock bottom. And 99% of the folks that do walk in my door are forced to walk in my door for some reason or another. It's either law enforcement involvement, they've gotten a DUI, they've gotten something. But these folks that are out there using these opioids are in teetotal denial of what is going on. And they don't really want help. And I asked, my husband asked, and he said, well, what are you seeing this far? And I told him all of the different types and the percentages. And he said, well, listen, he said, if you were out there and you were feeling good and you were high as a kite and that was a good feeling, you obviously don't think that you have a problem. It doesn't become a problem until it affects your family, affects your job, affects what's going on in the community. that's when the problem exists. But you see it as a family member, you see it within your family of what's going on. But the person that has it doesn't see it. And I'm at a loss of what we can do. We provide the services, we're there. I just need to come in the door, and they're obviously not.
One statistic I want to share with you from the coroner's perspective is that these drug deaths that we're investigating are mostly accidental, not intentional. When we look at suicides, we see guns and ligatures being used for suicides. Rarely do we see people taking an overdose. When we do a death investigation on the polydrug deaths and the street drugs, these are usually accidental. So I just want to share that with you. Next up on our panel is David Cothran, Director of ANMED Emergency Rental.
Good evening. Thank you, Greg and Carol, for inviting me. I agree with all the comments made. This is definitely an ongoing problem in our community. Just a few facts about what we see at ANMED Health through our emergency department. We see about 80,000 patients a year. That's our annual volume. That's about 220 patients a day. And I would agree that, you know, a lot of these drug overdoses are not necessarily intentional. We certainly see that, but when you do the numbers, we see between 20 and 30 patients per month who are classified as a drug overdose. And that sounds small, but I agree with Greg. A lot of people, you know, who are using drugs, you know, either overdose by intent or by accident, I guess we'll say, or unintentional death by drug, are things that would either be seen by the coroner, and unfortunately we see a lot of those that come in by EMS or sometimes brought in by private vehicle that we will then deal with the coroner's office. So we can classify drug overdose as accidental, intentional, or unknown. And the surprising thing is that we talk a lot about a lot of what we would call illicit or illegal drugs. The majority of drug overdoses we see would have been from an otherwise legitimate prescription at some point. So while we do see heroin, K2 synthetic marijuana, marijuana itself, some of the fentanyls, which, you know, it's been in the media a lot, especially the carfentanil, which is original drug intent is an anesthetic agent. And you hear these reports about being 1,000 times more potent than morphine, for example. Those are the things that I think people get into that, you know, don't really understand how much it takes to basically stop you from breathing. Because remember, that's kind of the goal of anesthesia, is to stop you from having bodily movements, which also stops your ability to breathe. And maybe you can do the drug 4 or 5 times, and that the very next time, that's the dose that you've received, that no one's there to help you. And unfortunately, those patients often pass away. But again, if you think about that end of the spectrum, and what I alluded to a minute ago with otherwise legitimate prescriptions, I'm not really talking about people who were prescribed, say, a heart medication, digoxin or something like that, and they accidentally took a couple of extra doses. Those are certainly included in our numbers, and they have medical problems. So I'm basically saying that 20 to 30 is more predominantly either accidental or intentional, because we do see patients who come in who say, I took this drug with the intent of committing suicide by this drug. And that's a little bit harder to tease out unless they tell you that. So in terms of the illegal, illicit street drugs, and certainly prescription drugs do wind up doing that, we find that, you know, patients who present to us are going to have to be medically managed and have their medical issues stabilized. And I will speak to the fact that of that population, when they tell us or we find out by later when they've recovered enough, a lot of the mental illness, behavioral health issues is what drove that in the first place. So it's not just people who are wanting to get high, take a little bit too much. It is a device sometimes, maybe originally intended to treat pain or to treat depression or whatever, and then it becomes kind of the end of the line result of having access and abuse of that drug. So while drug overdose in and of itself is the 20 to 30 a month we see, drug abuse as a problem is something much more prevalent and not as easy to capture the statistic on.
One of the initiatives that the task force has taken on is to ensure that every law enforcement officer in Anderson County has Narcan. Narcan is a spray mist that can be given to someone that is overdosed. Many times law enforcement's the first responders on the scene of these overdoses. When EMS is requested, they're usually staged until the scene is safe. So many times they're the first ones there. We also address the issue of officer safety because they can come in contact with these drugs and we want them to be able to take care of themselves or their partners. So right now we have about 4 agencies in Anderson County that have been certified to carry the Narcan. The rest of them are signed up and are working the schedule. We hope before the end of the year that every officer in Anderson County, city and county, will have Narcan on their person to administer that. So it also can be given to canine animals because they are certainly at risk. Next up is Stacy Ridley from the Executive Director of Sloan House.
I'm Stacy Carroll. I am the Director of Sloan House Ministries. We have been around since 1999, so I'm kind of like Karen in that it's not real new to us because that's, you know, that's all we've done for all these years. And I've had an opportunity to walk with a lot of women with drug and alcohol addictions. I had addiction to meth myself about 27 years ago, and it's complicated, but there's just so much hope. There's so much hope in people getting clean and sober, but at some point we're all going to have to get together and agree that it's more than a spiritual problem, a mental problem, it's everything. It's all these things wrapped up in one, and to work with individuals and deal with each person and get to where it was that it happened, where they got stuck. It takes time and it takes community. And, you know, a lot of our ladies, they've been shunned. They, you know, their family don't understand, of course. And so they're isolated from their community, they're isolated from their churches. And we have a fantastic program. We started out, you know, just doing the halfway house, and we started to see more and more people die because they didn't have an opportunity to really get good professional counseling and have people to walk with them in the churches and things like that. So we opened the treatment center, and when we opened our treatment center in Belton, it has 20 beds, and we still have the halfway house, and it has 11 beds in it. We didn't charge anything, you know, and that soon, you know, kind of got to where we were just running, and we were trying to treat these ladies. So I certainly don't agree that they don't want help. They do want help. We would have 20 ladies, and then somebody lined up to come into their bed as soon as they leave. Right now, I have a stack of applications for people who need scholarships. They need to be able to come through there. We have licensed counselors. We have full-time people working there, and it's a great program. The ladies are up in the mornings. After they've been there the first month, they're happy, they're laughing. But true, once they get past that and they've got this great community there, and then they go back out sometimes, you know, it's just, it's complicated, and we all know that. But, you know, as far as, you know, thinking that they're out having fun and feeling good, they might have felt good the first few times, but it doesn't work anymore. They don't get high anymore, you know, by now. So our program does focus on the mental, which we fight to get in mental health all the time. We try to get doctors to prescribe antidepressants for people who know they have diagnosis. They know that. And to be able to practically sit on them until we can actually get through all of what it takes to get in there, then either they're ready to run or just all the pieces. The anxiety alone from drug addiction, the obsession You know, if you've never been addicted, then it's hard to imagine that your brain would only think about one thing, and that one thing is what is isolating you from everybody else and killing you. But so we try so hard to get their medicine so that they can get that serotonin, dopamine a little bit, just to get them through that first period of time. They're exercising, they're eating. So, you know, the physical part, the mental part, the emotional part is the hardest, because a lot of these ladies come in, they're broken. They're just broken. And, you know, they're even starting to find out now that a lot of children had accidents when they have brain injuries. And those brain injuries have caused a lot of this behavior problems and things like this. A lot of it, yes, is mental illness. Some of it is PTSD from traumatic events in their lives. And a lot of times we don't realize that. We just want to get them fixed. We want them to stop ruining our lives. The other thing being the spiritual part. Now that Kurt has his church, and more of the churches are starting to actually recognize God's grace and mercy, and that, you know, we should all be welcome there. I mean, even when we first started, I can remember people moving their pocketbooks when we came in to sit down, which does make a little bit of sense. But we do just, and, you know, again, community, meetings, people reaching out, being willing to walk with these. They cannot do this on their own. They absolutely can't. And, you know, like I said, we have a fantastic program, and we would like to connect with the jail a little bit better. I have the jail calling most weeks. I've got one coming in, we have one coming in Monday from the jail, and she said there's 3 more begging, you know, to try to get somebody to help them. So I think that we can do this. I really do. If we'll just get together, and of course we don't agree, whether it's a disease or whatever, we don't have to. They're hurting and they need help. So that's.
My name is Karen, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm originally from Savannah, Georgia, but I've called Anderson my home and have been a citizen and a proud member of this community for going on about 7 years. My drinking career spanned over 44 years. I've been to a little over 2.5 years ago. Yeah, I'm giving away my age a little bit. In the minds of us alcoholics, though, I'm really only about 15.5 years old. And let me tell you why. You see, they say that you literally start the path of sobriety at the age that your drinking career began. Mine began when I was 13 years old. After my 5th trip to the hospital with acute pancreatitis due to alcohol abuse, I had what we say in the 12-step program, hit rock bottom. I had 2 options, to live or to die. I know I could not tackle and defeat this disease without help. I knew I couldn't. So after my release from the hospital, I decided to reach out to the Help 12-Step program of AA once again, and maybe, just maybe this time, I would get it. I had tried to get sober before a couple of times. Once I made it for 73 days. Another time, here in Anderson at Central, I was sober for 30 days. I was nervous and fearful of what the others in recovery would say or think about me, and it was very difficult to come back into the rooms. But it was a serious matter of life and death for me, and I took the first step. When I walked into the 10 o'clock meeting at Central here in Anderson, I was greeted with love and open arms. There was no judgment, just genuine concern for my well-being. They told me I was the most important person there, a newcomer. They gave me a phone list. The first thing I saw was the 12 steps of AA on the wall. And right then, a light came on. And I knew that it was imperative that I grasp and hang on to the first 3 steps. It was imperative that I do that. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. True, I was dying and out of control. Alcohol and drugs are cunning, baffling, and powerful things. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I knew that had to be true as I was thinking more clearly in just a few days that I hadn't taken a drink. And it was a miracle. Step 3, made a decision to turn our life and our will over to the care of God as we understood Him. This is perhaps, to me, the most important step because it's all about surrender. It's about realizing that we are not in control. God is in control. I know when I was the engineer, my life was a train wreck. So I had to grasp this program. I'm glad I did. It was important to get a sponsor to help coach me through the 12-step program, especially the 4th step. That was a terror for me. Made a searching and fearless inventory of ourselves. It's painful and can be very humiliating and humbling because you have to face hurt and resentment and figure your part in all of it. That's where honesty and openness come into play. My willingness brought me back. The rest of the steps are all tools for getting and staying sober on your journey through recovery. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a journey. This is an outlet for this alcoholic. It's a journey. Like hundreds and thousands of my fellows, we'll all be on this journey for the rest of our lives if we're lucky. The beauty about AA and the 12-step program is a fellowship, and that you don't have to do it alone. The gift that I have today is peace, joy, and serenity. The ultimate reward is my personal relationship. Service work is another strong component in the 12-step program. When I accepted my higher power as such, I made a pact. I asked God to keep me sober so that I could serve Him. Today, I serve with United Way America. This is my 3rd term. I serve my church, South Main Chapel Mercy Center. AA, or drinking school, is a very integral part of my recovery because this is where I get my strength experience of hope. That's what it's about, hope. Life doesn't get easier just because you're sober. I went through the 2nd diagnosis of cancer with my husband, and 10 months later, it took his life. But you know what? I didn't have to drink over it. I did not have to drink over it. I can face life on life's terms today, as long as I follow the 12 steps and go into the fellowship and do what I'm supposed to do in the eyes of my God, my higher power. I had the support of my fellows in AA when my husband passed away, my church family, and my family at United Way America. And I am not alone today, and I know that deep down. I invite you to come to any of the open meetings of AA, and I have provided schedules of the meetings in the back. We are in serious need of support through the community. I'm a regular chairperson at Kingdom Seekers Recovery Group at South Main Chapel Mercy on Mondays at 5:30, and I've written that down for you on the schedule. There's also a program, and I don't know, some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. It's called Al-Anon, and it's for family members and friends of people who are suffering from drug and alcohol addiction. See, I'm kind of getting off the thing, but that's okay. It's similar to the 12-step program. Just remember, if you have the opportunity to attend any of our NA meetings or AA meetings, that it's anonymous. That what you see there, who you see there, what you hear there, must stay there. And that's out of respect for the people that are trying to get sober. It's anonymous. Today I have a new lease on life. I've learned to love and I've learned to forgive myself. That's very hard. I shall not forget the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. The past, for me now, is a point of reference, not a point of residence. The 12 steps must be built on the foundation of faith and trust in God, along with honesty, openness, and most important of all, I've heard this through the panel, willingness. You have to have the willingness, this rock bottom that you hit. You have to be willing to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and say, I cannot do this alone. I've got to have help. And thank God for the program of NA and AA. And thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Greg, and Carol, for giving me this opportunity to come and just share and shed some light on my experience. Because listen, every single person sitting in here, that's all you have, is your experience. And let me tell you something about addiction. Perspective changes everything. And let me tell you why you're sitting here. Because addiction's affected you in some way, shape, form, or fashion. See, it ain't quite, addiction ain't quite as real until it hits your home. And then we start scrambling for answers, wanting to know what to do. But see, we're very situational people. We like to handle it as it happens. And then we handle the situation, and before we get it fixed, we got another one. And at the end of the day, we get to a place to where we have to admit defeat and say, you know what? And what I'm seeing is a community of people come together saying, we don't really have any answers. But this is what I came up here to do. I come up here to share with you that there is an answer. Like, I didn't come to share that, you know, maybe this will work, maybe that'll work. There are some absolute truths in this life. And there are some answers in strategically how we can come together as a community and we can help these people. It ain't no maybe we can help them. I'm telling you, the ones who are honestly willing to make an effort, we can put in place a system, not a situation. Listen, you ever played whack-a-mole with your life? You ever seen that game where you hit the mole and by the time you get that mole down, you got another one up? And by the time you get that mole down, you got another one up. That's what typically, individually, we do with all our lives. We view things through situations and we address it as it comes instead of putting systems in place to fix the dysfunction, to quit the situations from happening. So what I gather, and let me share this where the passion comes from, because I know people can hear the passion. The passion doesn't come from being a college, a Clemson graduate. As a matter of fact, I barely got through high school. By the time I graduated high school, I had 2 children. And I'd already been to detox one time because I couldn't quit popping pain pills. By the age of 20, I'd done been twice that I couldn't quit smoking crack. By the age of 22, I'd done been multiple times that I couldn't seem to find an answer. And let me tell you what I believe. I hear denial, denial. I don't use that word anymore. Because the fact was, by the age of 22, there was no denying the fact that I had a bad problem. Where I stepped over 2 children that I would rather get high than put diapers on their tail. It was clear to me that I had a problem. I don't believe that addiction is a problem of denial. I believe addiction is a problem of ignorance. Every problem that we are having in here facing addiction is a lack of knowledge. It's either we don't have knowledge, the absence of knowledge, or we've obtained wrong knowledge and all our action is based on half-truth, which is leaving us with half measures and half nothing. So I believe if we're going to take together as action and go forth together, I think the first thing we have to do is find out what the real problem is. Before we can ever take action and be proactive, it has to be based on the absolute truth for what the problem that we're facing is. Because we do really great at crime, but crime is a symptom. We do really good at collecting the drugs from the dope dealers, but the substance is a chemical, is a symptom. And I think we have great systems in place to band-aid the problem, but I don't think we have any systems in place that goes to the heart of the problem to keep the kids from DSS, to keep the kids from being in a prison cell. Because those are all the manifestation and the last thing that takes place. Where's the system that gets it at the desire and the choice? See, this is the system I think that we lack in our communities. And I believe that my heart has been, as you can see, starting a rehabilitation center in Anderson that will allow these people to find out what the real problem is, so that the decisions that they make can point their feet in a direction that doesn't make them spin their tires. Because faith, regardless of your view on faith, faith is only as good as what it's attached to. And if your decision making isn't attached to the truth, you're going to be doing a whole lot, but you're going to be bogged down at the end of the day because you're going to see no results. And I really feel like that's why we're sitting here tonight, is because we're doing a whole lot. As a matter of fact, I'm a associate pastor here at Crossover on West Whitner Street, and I probably have 8 people in the sheriff's office and in the county that I see every day that heart breaks because they just like you. They don't want to put them in jail. Because guess what? It's a month later, the same person they put in jail, they put them in again. As a matter of fact, one of them was my sister. Multiple times. But guess what? She finally got educated, got put in a place in Greenwood, and this year, in 2 months, she'll be 1 year sober. So what am I saying? I know that I said I'm going to get up there and just tell them whatever comes to my mind. What am I saying? I'm saying this is no longer his problem. This is no longer their problem. You're sitting in here today, you've come to the understanding that this is our problem. And I have a facility that I just secured a building for on West Whitner Street that I can put 50 men in it. Let me tell you why I can't do it right now. Because I don't have the resources. I've spent 10 months trying to raise $60,000 just to get a loan so that I can buy a building to put them in. And the only reason why I got a building today is because God moved a mountain and He gave me one. But I'm still 6 months out from being able to open my facility because I don't have the money to put a $30,000 sprinkler system in it so I can put a man in a bed and keep him overnight. But with the right money, put in the right place, we can attack the heart of this issue, and together fighting crime, together fighting lawlessness, together giving these people the help that they need. This young lady here, I heard her speak her heart. I mean, that's her heart, that she has help to provide, but people don't know about it. We need to let them know about it. You know, we need to make them aware of the resources that is available to help them. You see more McDonald's signs about a Big Mac than you do the help that we have to offer people that are literally dying. I see about 10 mamas in here who are affected because their children are still doing dope or they're sober. And let me tell you something, it's real, man. Like, this ain't something we get together and I hope after the night we don't forget it, we just do it to make the people happy. I'm talking some broken-hearted families in here who are having to watch their children die. And this is what I told Greg, and I'll be quiet. I said, we're so concerned about the outcome. We're so concerned about the results when we should just be concerned on what we can do. Because when we base what we do off truth, and we put people in a position to have the opportunity, if they do die, at least it wasn't from a lack of opportunity. You know, but it's sad that when people have to stay on the streets because they don't have the opportunity. That's a totally different ballgame. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to do what I've been doing for 12 years. I'm going to go after them. Ask anybody I know. I get 4 or 5, and you can check my phone right now, just today, the people who have inboxed me and called me because they want a bed, but every facility I've called today is on a 14-day waiting list. To get in the Faith Home, it takes almost a month. To get into Oaks Recovery in Greenwood, they have 14 days at least to get in it. And the ones that don't, people that come off the street, guess what? They ain't got $3,600. They don't have $3,600. So guess what? You have to turn them away because of a money issue. And I'm going to tell you, there ain't nothing more disturbing for somebody that puts their life into helping addicts to have to look at one and tell them you can't have a bed because you don't have no money. There ain't nothing more heartbreaking. So do I think there's some absolute truths? I do. Do I think there's an answer? I do. Do I think together we can make an impact in Anderson? I do. And I think tonight has shown the seriousness of our leaders and their compassion and concern for the least of these. And I'm going to tell you, I'm behind you. 100% anything the Bridge Center and Crossover Community Church can do to take this epidemic and turn it upside down, we are willing to do it. We're willing to lock arms, and we're willing to go on the fire lines, and we're willing to do whatever we can. So thank you for this opportunity. By the way, if they didn't, I know he said my name is Bradley, but I'm Bradley, by the way. And I appreciate you guys just listening to a little bit of my passion and my concern for this tragedy. You know, it's an epidemic, man, and we gotta start somewhere. So thank y'all.
Like Bradley saying, one thing that I think, and I roam around and talk, when I roam around, but one thing that I think that resonates with everyone here in this panel is how many times you see the incidents and you don't connect it. I know for a lot of the people here, they personally connect it, but like Bradley said, one of the biggest things is you will never understand a situation until it personally affects you, okay? So, I'll tell you a little personal story about me. I am a foster parent myself. I work for DSS, I'm the program coordinator there, but I am myself a foster parent with my wife. And we talked with a group of our friends in a small church group, and you know, we were talking to them about the passion for foster care and how to get them involved. And one of the funny things I think that we heard from that group, and even I've heard from my own family, is, you know, well, those kids have a place to go. There's plenty of places for them to go. And I would ask them, I said, well, if you know where they are, please tell me. Because I'm at the office late at night trying to find somewhere that would take just 2 siblings, okay? So, one of the common things that we don't associate is that somehow children are affected in this. When you see the Facebook article of the drug bust that happened just the other night with law enforcement, or you see the wreck where someone was under the influence, a lot of times those children, there are children involved in those cases. You may not see it in that article, but I guarantee my phone is going off and my workers are going out trying to, you know, place those children with a family member, or in worst case scenario, placing those children with foster care, okay? So I really want you to think about, and I think we need to think about as an agency, as a panel, as a community, how we can help with addiction. Because it puts severe stress not only on our agency, but in our lives. One of the trainings I do with the agency of DSS is a new framework that we're doing called Signs of Safety. One of the craziest things I thought that we did as an agency is I was sitting in the meetings, we would have a family who we originally got involved years ago for drug use. What we would do is we would send them to a drug program, close our case. We would get them back, send them to a drug program, close the case. I think you kind of understand where I'm going with this, and when we've seen family member 13 times and we know them and they're just as familiar as us, I had a family one time to give me my own speech to myself. They didn't see me that many times. So I could basically give her the manual and let her investigate herself. But as an agency, we had to think, why are we continuously treating this the same when we need to think about it in a different frame? Okay? You hear the saying, it takes a village. That's what it really takes. It's not just DSS. I can come visit with you once a month, but I'm not there with you all the time. Everyone here sees you probably more than I do. And one of the things we're really pushing as an agency is getting those people involved so we can help solve the problem. The problem's never going to go away. We hope that someone will get clean, but it's never going to be a 100% situation that everything's fine. So in the event that that situation occurs, we're trying to work through ways that they can keep their children safe, and we can also get those parents help, okay? So let me just read you some quick stats and I'll sit down. So last year we had 1,544 cases that were for abuse or neglect. That's a case. That's not giving you numbers on moms, dads, children. That's just a case, okay? Within this year, we are already up to 2,400, okay? So as you can see, there is a lot of stress being put on our agency, on our families, on our agencies in regards to addiction. And those are just cases that we're involved with for drugs. We're involved with the other ones, but those are the ones that we're involved for drugs. So let me read you one other quick stat. We have 2,303 foster homes across the state, okay? In the upstate, we have one of the biggest crises for trying to get foster homes. I can tell you several instances of children that are having to be split up, having to be shipped to other parts of the state because there's no one that would keep you. I had 2 just the other night that no one could take. So again, it's got to be our community, our panels pulling together to help these families. So not only can we help keep children safe, but we can also help families to strive. Because these are the people that you see every day at the gas station. The kids are in line. You never know what they may be going through, but those are the families that we deal with. Okay? Last stat I'll give you, and I'll sit down. We have had 8 foster kids in our home. They have all 8 been boys until today. My wife tricked me and we took 2 girls. I'll let you know how that goes Saturday when I want to watch college football, but we're digressing now. Out of those kids, all 10 have been because of drugs. It's an epidemic, and we've got to pull together whatever we can do to help make it a better situation. And we've got to take action. One of the biggest things, I come from a sports background, played college football, so I'm big on accountability. It's great to say what everyone else can do, but I'm big on we need to own it ourselves. Exactly like Bradley said, we need to take ownership because these are our kids. And these kids are learning what we're showing them and what we're doing. Okay? Thank you for coming and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you all for being here. And, you know, when I was trying to prepare what I wanted to say to wrap up this gathering this evening, I went online and Googled what are some common quotes regarding addiction and recovery. And one of the first ones that came up was Mark Twain's quote, "If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got." And what I've heard here tonight is there is a sense of unsettledness among us, which is good. Saying we can't continue doing what we've been doing, both as a community and perhaps beyond just our own community as a nation. We need to begin asking questions and thinking about different approaches to deal with this issue that's touching all of our lives. And that came out clearly here tonight too, that this is our problem. It's not their problem. It's not a law enforcement problem. It's not a hospital problem. It's not a church problem. It's not an individual problem. It's not a family problem. It's our problem altogether. And we have to work together. I hear that. And that, I find that hopeful, encouraging, that you are here tonight, and I hope you will spread the word. Carl Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. I hear acceptance here tonight. Acceptance that this is a problem. And then this anonymous quote you've heard before, "Today, though, is the first day of the rest of our life." And that's hope. And that's what I hear as well here tonight, is hope. I'm the pastor at South Main Chapel and Mercy Center. We're a relatively new church on the south end of town, and we intentionally started as a church to be open and welcoming to all people, but particularly to folks who struggle with issues like addiction or mental illness, and to take an all-in approach in trying to help. So we work in partnership with state agencies and with other nonprofit organizations to try to help people feel like they are not alone. And I heard that here tonight too, that for the addict and for the family of that addict, what they need more than anything is to understand they are not alone in this. And so we have to embrace each other through working together. You know, lots of great ideas generated here and lots of different perspectives. What I would like to say, but one thing that really stood out to me is something Stacy and Carol said, that this is a complex problem. There's no one size-fits-all answer. Sometimes we get passionate about our own solutions and think, well, if everybody just accept this, then it would all be solved. You know, I think it probably would have been solved hundreds, if not thousands of years ago if that were true. We as human beings are complex. And the things that affect our lives, the challenges we face are complex, and addiction is very complex. And so we have to be willing to listen to each other and to be open to various ideas and various ways of trying to address this issue. thank you again for being part of what makes Anderson a caring community. And I'm hopeful. Some might say naive, but I'm hopeful that we are going to make a difference. And we can't wait for the solutions to come from outside of here. Yes, we need money. Oh, yes. We do need money. But we can't wait for that to happen. We have to begin working together to solve these issues here with each other and raise our voices so that others will notice. And nothing attracts money more than when people start seeing, when those who hold the purse strings start seeing people get passionate and interested and motivated. So you go out and tell folks that you have connections with in your lives what you heard and saw and experienced here tonight, and become a part of making this a solution, making the solution happen. So thank you.
I want to thank Greg for hosting us again this evening, for his compassion as our coroner, for what is happening in our community. I want to thank all the panelists. You all brought a different perspective, one that I think will make us think. And also thank Charles, thank you for driving up from Columbia, working with us. And Kurt, thank you for our closing. We had goals for these conversations to help us as a community know more about the issue, to know what resources are available, to know how to access those resources, and to know what you can do. We can't answer all those questions tonight, but you will hear from us because we wanted to listen. We hope we will all learn, but then we want to take action. If you did not sign in, please sign in on your way out. Make sure we have your email address because we will be communicating. This is not the last time you will hear United Way working toward getting the community involved with addiction. We must change the headlines in our newspaper. We must change the headline of our TV broadcast and say we are going to be a better Anderson County, and we can do it when we all work together. Thank you for being here this evening. October the 5th, we'll be right back here talking about lack of conflict resolution skills, and on October 26th, talking about the proliferation of gangs.